Hello, hope you've been having a great week so far. In my last two videos, I asked two different questions. The first question was, why are you investing? And the second question was, when will you be cashing out your investment? So this week, I want to ask a third question. I'm very curious. And the question is, where will you be investing? Now, I think, especially for South Africans, this is a very important question, mostly because if we look at the South African rand versus the US dollar, it has weakened significantly over time. We did have a brief period of strengthening between 2001, when it was at about 1207, the end of 2001, till about 2004, end of 2004, went to 5 Rand 76 versus the US dollar. But pretty much ever since then, it's, as you can see in this chart, it's been on well, pretty much a one-way traffic all the way, weakening from in 2011 is at about 6 Rand 54 to where it is today, 17 Rand 96. Fortunately, we have seen a nice pull strengthening since its all-time weakness of about 1984 thereabouts in May, just before the South African elections. So for those investors that have taken their money offshore, invested offshore, they certainly have benefited from this, weakness of the rand versus the US dollar, because they would have converted their rands into dollars, hopefully, if they were lucky, way back then. Not everyone was so fortunate, and not everyone did that. But as they say, hindsight is an exact science. Obviously, if you're watching this video and you're not in South Africa, it's a different story for you. What I have noticed over the years is people, generally speaking, and I am generalizing here, tend to invest with what they know. So I spent a bit of time in New Zealand a few years ago, and most Kiwis in New Zealand invest in stocks listed in New Zealand because it's familiar to them. They know about those companies. They shop at those companies. They do banking with those banks in New Zealand. And it's the same as in South Africa. You're familiar with the shops here, Woolworths, ShopRite. You do your shopping there. They're listed on the stock exchange. You do your banking with familiar brands, Standard Bank, FNB, etc. So it makes sense for people to want to invest with big brand names that they know. However, as can be seen from this chart, had you been a South African investor in particular, you would have benefited by taking your money offshore many years ago. So the other benefits of investing offshore is that you are able to invest in stocks that we've all heard of. They're some of the biggest companies in the world. So some of the mega cap companies, as they call them. I'll just show you a little chart here. For example, the well-known names like Apple and Coca-Cola and Alphabet, which is Google. And some of the returns have been pretty spectacular. NVIDIA at the top of the list here, topping out this year's total return for the past year, 163% return. This is in US dollars, by the way, not in rands. Over the last year, up 163% in NVIDIA. And over the last 10 years, 27,000%. So had you been fortunate enough to catch that one, that would be nice. More familiar to South African investors, something like Tencent, which is owned by Naspers and Prosus, or they own a percentage of it. Tencent in China, one of the biggest tech companies in China also. Good return this year, the last year, 18% in US dollars and 215% over the last 10 years. So not bad at all. And the familiar names like Apple, 25% over the last year, 898% in the last 10 years. So these are the additional reasons why it's worth looking at other countries to invest your money and diversifying it, not only investing in South Africa. If you're a South African investor, or wherever you are in the world, it is worth looking at other countries as well. Lots of ExxonMobil, the oil company, up 80% over the last 10 years. Netflix, 906%. And Facebook, that many people use, up 615% over the last 10 years. So fantastic returns there. Obviously, not everything works out well all the time. So in the last year, for example, these are just the mega cap stocks, the really big ones that you would have heard about. Tesla, for example, is down 15% in the last year, well, year to date, and 29% down in the last 2 years, but still in the last 10 years, up 1100%. So that's not bad. Nestle, we've all heard of that, minus 12% in the last year, minus 13% in the last 2 years, but still a healthy 67% in the last 10 years. McDonald's, pretty much flat, minus 1% in the last year, but again, up 297% in the last 10 years. So it just shows some of the returns that we've seen by investors investing offshore. I do have various clients that have invested offshore. Some of the other companies, not as big, but some familiar names you might have heard of. MicroStrategy, that's the one that invests so much of their money in Bitcoin. Can't argue with those returns, though. 286% in the last year, 879% in the last 10 years. Very charismatic leader there, interesting guy. Check him out on Google, YouTube. And Anglo Gold, which is also listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Pretty good returns over the last year, 81% in US dollars, pretty good. 97% over the last 10 years, not bad. Other companies you probably would have heard of, Barclays, which used to be in South Africa, no longer, up 69% in the last year, but a measly 5% over the last 10 years. So, and Rolls-Royce, we've all heard of Rolls-Royce, up 156% over the last year, 551% over the last 2 years, but down 7%, minus 7% over the last 10 years. So just goes to show that stock picking is important. On the other side of looking at some of the larger cap companies that haven't done so well, Intel, the tech company, down 59% in the last year, down minus 25% over the last 10 years. If you have teenage children, you would have heard of Snap, the social media platform, down 45% in the last year, down 62% in the last 10 years. So it's not all rosy, and you do need to be careful. And I hope you have someone that can advise you in terms of which stocks to invest in. Warner Brothers, you remember the cartoons from when we were younger, and all the other media that they own. Also hasn't done too well, minus 83% in the last 10 years. Estee Lauder, the cosmetics company, up 35% in 10 years, but not having a good time as of late. Even Boeing, down 34% year to date, but still up 56% in the last 10 years. So these are companies you would have heard of, global brand names, and we can invest in them. I've got, as mentioned, quite a few clients that invest offshore. The one on the left here, for example, is a client of mine. She invested in mostly US listed stocks like Nvidia, Microsoft, Apple, which have done very nicely. Just a point here I wanted to point out, looking at Nvidia, the worst case scenario you can have when you invest in a stock is that it can lose minus 100%. That's the absolute worst case scenario. It gets delisted, for example, and you've lost all your money. However, the best case scenario is not plus 100%. As you can see, Nvidia up 526%. So that's why it's an asymmetrical risk-reward relationship when you invest in the stock market. So it does, advocate the case for diversifying your portfolio, as well as being patient in the stock market. This client here is stocks are focused mostly in Europe. UBS, the Swiss bank you might have heard of, Total, the energy company, Mercedes-Benz, So, you know, again, geographically, he's got a different focus, that client. He's more invested in European stocks. But some of the platforms, the platform that we use to invest our clients offshore is very diversified. Particularly what I like are these exchange-traded funds. Exchange-traded fund, as you know, is just a fund listed on a stock exchange and can be bought and sold the same as a stock, any company. And that fund will invest in a particular theme. So, for example, if we have a look here, this one, a global energy producers exchange traded fund. So that's companies that produce energy. Here's one that invests only in physical gold, Wisdom Tree Physical Gold, one that invests in Bitcoin miners, short-term money market, US money market, 1 to 3 month T-bills, next generation internet exchange traded fund, electric vehicles and driving tech, another Bitcoin one, just pure crude oil, robotics and artificial intelligence, treasury bonds, so social media. So any sort of investment theme that you can think of, there's more than likely an exchange traded fund that listed offshore that we can buy for you in that theme. We've even got bonds, US bonds, etc. So just wanted to discuss a little bit about where you're going to be investing. Doesn't only necessarily have to be in your local country. With technology these days, we can invest pretty much anywhere in the world, and obviously we can try and assist you in terms of deciding what to invest in. So I hope you enjoyed that one today. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me what you think. What has your experience been? Have you invested offshore? Have you kept all your money in South Africa or wherever it is that you live? What's your experience been? I'd love to hear from you. You're welcome to comment in the comment section, subscribe, or drop me an email, warrenes@afrifocus.co.za, warrenes@afrifocus.co.za. Until next time, chat soon.